Aloha, you are now entering behind the scenes and beyond the talk with TEDx Honolulu. I'm your host, Justine Espirutu, and today's guest is one of our 12 speakers at our March event Paradigm Shift, Cheyne Gallarde.
Hello. Hi, I'm Cheyne. Hi.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Just to recap again, so what we've been doing with this series is we have the opportunity to get more in depth with the speakers, give you guys a little more chance to talk about the ideas you presented, get to know your background a little more, and kind of just showcase you guys.
Awesome.
Want to remind everyone again, feel free to tweet us any questions at ThinkTech High, and we'll address them as they come up. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So for a little background, I like to kind of start with how you heard about TEDx Honolulu, if it's something that was on your radar for a while before you came on as a speaker, if you knew about the general TED Talks ahead of time, and just kind of get some background on that.
Yeah, well, I think like most people, I was aware of like TED Talks, but then TEDx I became aware of through social media, and you know, it always seemed like something really exciting that I wanted to do, but in previous years, the theme just didn't really match anything that I did. So when Paradigm Shift came up, and then I got the email to audition, and I was like, oh, what can I do that's kind of related to like my art and things like that? And so Paradigm Shift, and I got to thinking of something that matched the theme. So it was my opportunity. I leapt at it. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So had people been telling you for a while when they heard about TEDx, like, Cheyne, you got to do this? You saw an audition, you're like,
no.
Waited for the perfect moment.
No, I don't know, because people have they kind of like pigeonhole you when you're like a specific type of artist. They're like, oh, you're a photographer, so has nothing to do with tech or things like that. I'm like, well, actually. So people didn't really think of me for the TED Talks. So I took it upon myself. I was all like, you know, I'm going to come up with something that's meaningful and try and get to the core of what I do. Because my talk really isn't about, it's not about photography. So it's something about we can all relate to. So.
Yeah, and that's what I've enjoyed about TED Talks and our TEDx events is having more unconventional artists. We talk about the original TED Talks were technology and education and design, and I'm glad it's splintered off into more of a variety of topics and having artists on. I think I've been really excited to interview the other Cheyne as well, and kind of get that history, and it's pretty fascinating. So I'm stoked. So how did it feel going through the audition process, how did it feel to get chosen? I think over 100 people auditioned, and there was 12 slots.
Yeah, it was pretty fantastic. Like, you know, you go through an audition, and I've been through so many play auditions, things like that, but it never gets easier. And, you know, here you have, you know, I think I only had like 5 minutes to wow the judges, or the panel, the board. And I originally thought I was supposed to have like 8-10 minutes. So right beforehand, I like just like drew like a big X through like a big portion of my pitch. And I was all like, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about. And it was nerve-wracking, but it was great, you know? And I was like, even if I don't even get called back, I'm just so happy that I did it. So it was great.
Yeah, definitely good to challenge yourself. And yeah, how does it, you know, it is like our local version TEDx, but you know, they set it up pretty nice to be pretty similar to the TED Talks and to be on that stage.
Yeah.
It's been pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was very exciting. I haven't spoken to that many people before. Well, at least not just me by myself. I mean, in theater, you have like hundreds of people, but like.
Yeah, well, it's great to have that chance to have, like, if you do theater, you know, you're using someone else's words. So that idea that you're up there presenting something you think are putting out there.
Yeah, so it was a great experience. So.
Cool. Do you want to talk a little bit about, or could you, kind of summarize your talk and then how maybe what compelled you with the theme of Paradigm Shift and how your topic came up?
Okay. Well, Paradigm Shift, it got me thinking about what are things that people really take for granted or just really don't understand. And a lot of my work centers around nostalgia and, you know, that kind of warm, fuzzy feeling we get when we think about old things. And so I kind of broke down what nostalgia is and kind of dispelled the myth that nostalgia is a negative thing. Because part of my talk talks about the history of nostalgia and how people always kind of frowned upon, you know, thinking fondly on the past, because it's like, if you're living in the past, that means you're not happy in the present. Mm-hmm. And that's the common misconception. And so my talk kind of talks about how you can use nostalgia, you just flip it around and give it a positive spin. And so.
Yeah, I mean, I liked definitely what you said about remembering who you are and where you came from, mm-hmm. and kind of your path. And it's interesting, you mentioned in your talk that at 13 years old, you knew what you wanted to do, and you knew you wanted to be an artist, which is really interesting. That talking to Cheyne, the other artist, he talked about kind of starting life as like a programmer, and then kind of consciously later on making that transition, mm-hmm. to like being an artist and identifying himself as an artist. And last week we spoke with Joe, the speaker trainer, and he has a background in fashion. And you know, what he ended up doing, you know, he couldn't have done it earlier, and every like piece kind of fell into, and he couldn't imagine that he'd be where he is today. So I'm super interested, and I'm always fascinated with people that are like, I knew exactly what I wanted to do at that.
Well, I mean, it's always been kind of like a dream. As a kid, I would draw like cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons, things like that. So I knew I wanted to be some kind of artist, but I just never really knew that I could get paid for it. And I think that was what the big turning point was when I was 13. Like, I won like the yearbook cover contest, and like there was like, you know, like a $50 prize for that. But as like a 13-year-old kid, I'm like, what? Someone's actually giving me money to do this? This is awesome. And so I was like, that's gonna be my goal from now on, to always try and not necessarily get money for what I do, but, you know, get kind of some kind of reward or gratification, or, you know, I thought it was just awesome that my work was in everybody's hands. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that's awesome, but it was kind of scary, because then people could kind of like scrutinize it. Yeah, exactly.
Did it make you feel kind of like vulnerable of putting your stuff out there?
Yeah, you know, because it's like, you know, you just sketch in books all the time, or back of composition notebooks, and then like now it's like on the cover of a book. It's all like, that's pretty scary.
But at least it's like you won the contest.
Yeah.
That could give you a little bit of boost of like, okay, I earned this spot. So
yeah, exactly.
Someone liked it.
Yeah, someone liked it enough to put it on the cover. Yes.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the turning point, and it was like, I love this feeling. I love, you know, making art. It's that that weird feeling that there is no word for it. You know, like the ability to move people. Mm-hmm. You know, and I was like, wow, I kind of like that a lot. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Did you, I think that's kind of a unique perspective. Did you feel like it kind of stood out in terms of the other topics that were presented on, or the other positions or perspectives? I guess everyone was kind of unique.
For the TEDx? Yeah, definitely.
Have you seen a lot of other artists, TED Talks or TEDx Talks?
I have not. I'm not too familiar with the other artist ones, honestly.
So you're the first, maybe?
No, I doubt that. Maybe I'm the first artist to not talk about art.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's unique, because I think when I was talking to Joe, the speaker trainer, and he was saying how, you know, everybody else's talks, it's kind of really clean cut. Like, you kind of really know what to expect based off of the title. But with mine, The Power of Nostalgia, he said it could go anywhere. And I think it was that potential and that possibility that was exciting about it. That was like, what am I going to talk about? And I think that's what made it really stood out, is that it was like, what is this kid going to talk about, you know? So.
Yeah, you like giving them like, yeah, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And they like look up your name.
How can you make nostalgia interesting, you know? To me, that's like talking about like other intangible things, like love. When you talk about that, then people like start to roll their eyes. They're like, oh, I'm gonna give a speech about love now. So that was kind of like my wall to get over for nostalgia. It was like, I need to like get over that, the boring part of it.
Yeah. So is there anything you wish you could have elaborated more on, or
Yeah.
If you had more time.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to make it a little bit more relatable to people's lives. Like you're used to like talking about like marketing and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, how can I make it like about marketing? And so one of the nostalgic things I was going to talk about was how real estate agents, someone told me that a trick that they use is whenever families come for open house, they would put a box of open crayons, an open box of crayons somewhere in the house, because the smell of crayons really triggers people to think about home. So if you're a parent, you will envision the house as someplace you can raise your kids. And if you're a single person, then you'll be reminded of your childhood. And so either way, you'll think of this new house as your home because
Wow,
of
that's
that
like
scent.
sales psychology or something.
That's like what Disney does, right? They pipe in like the
Yeah.
fresh baked cookies smell to make you think of childhood.
Yeah, that's funny. I just recently met a real estate agent, and he said what he did is when he shows a house, he tells the story of like the families that had lived there before, and kind of builds that history, which is kind of that same thing to get people kind of nostalgic and thinking about.
Yeah. So it's that warm nostalgia feeling. So
yeah.
But that I wanted to include more talks about that, like how like tips and tricks on how you can use nostalgia to kind of like sway the conversation or use it in positive ways too. So.
Yeah. And then so you would say, is that kind of a general theme in your photography with Firebird photography as well?
Yeah. When I first started doing like my vintage photography, I wanted it to look like old portraits. I remember flipping through old family photo albums and looking at them and not even being there when the picture was taken, but that kind of warm feeling of like, wow, this is really cool. And like, oh, wow, my mom looked really awesome back then. Like, she looked like really badass back then. And so I was like, oh, I kind of want to get that feeling in my pictures, you know, where even though I'm shooting them new and I'm shooting them digitally, I wanted them to feel warm and familiar. So.
Yeah, I definitely saw a lot of those on your website and that style, and definitely it was cool to see to recognize some of the scenes of like Honolulu. I think the one in like Downbeat Diner, and it was cool to like see those familiar things in that kind of a different perspective.
Yeah.
And then you totally get a new feeling about it.
Yeah.
Which is exciting. Yeah. And definitely, you know, it's like kind of conflicting. Like I didn't know Downbeat Diner like 50 years ago, but I feel like I do.
Exactly.
And that's cool to change that perspective for people.
Yeah, and that's what's fun about it too. And like I grew up in Hawaii, so I'm familiar with the surroundings, but I was like, how can I reinvent this and make people see things that they see every day, but in a different light? So like I lived in Chinatown, like I'm familiar with it, and so I was like, how can I put like my own modern but retro spin on these things? And so yeah.
Another thing that I found on your website that I liked was the series you did, Skin Stories.
Oh, okay.
I think you just had the picture up. But it was interesting. I mean, you know, it's more modern, but I think I like the idea of, you know, the history in tattoos and the stories, you know, when you're talking about nostalgia and like remembering where you came from. And so that was interesting to me. And it was, you know, it's interesting. And one thing I think when I talk to artists or try to understand artists of how you do make a profession out of it and like your different kind of niches. And I saw, so you have those kind of scenery, or also one of the nice thing I saw was the contest you did for Valentine's Day, or just like those kind of like couple shots. Having that diversity of jobs, or kind of gigs you get, keeping it interesting for you.
Oh yeah, like my whole brand and my whole philosophy of doing art has always been keep it fun. Like if it's not fun, then I don't do it. Honestly, I will choose someone with a much lower budget if the project is way more fun. So yeah, and the Valentine's contest is fun because I get couples to write to me and tell me how they met.
Yeah, getting to hear that story.
It's so great, and it warms my heart, you know, in this day and age where, you know, it's totally acceptable to meet someone online, which is totally cool. But then when you meet couples that are like, oh, we were on the train one day and then I saw him the same train like for 2 weeks, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna ask him out on a date. I was like, oh, that's so sweet, you know? And so then I take that and I build a shoot around it, so.
That's awesome, and then it's a great way to kind of enter into people's lives and like, you know, get to know them in a very intimate way, or just getting to hear that background and story. You know,
Yeah,
some people,
yeah.
your friends or your family, you know, even a lot of people, they don't remember or know how their parents met. They don't ask that kind of stuff. So it's great to kind of, as a stranger, get to hear that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just so fascinated lately with people's profession and job, and then how it helps them relate to other people and interact.
Yeah, I'm very lucky that my art helps me to be around people a lot, because people are so inspiring, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
You know, people's backgrounds and what they do. So I recently had like a show at Spalding House Museum where it was totally inspired by like local archetypes and people saw, it was like a whole transformation thing where I would turn myself into different characters based off of people I saw on the bus. So
like literally, it was specifically people you saw on the bus.
Not specifically,
or just like,
but kind of like
saw around town.
like a more general term, like a war veteran from like the Pearl Harbor War. So I'm like, you see those everywhere, you know, people, they wear their badges of honor proudly and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, this is kind of him. So.
Yeah.
But not specifically like, you know, I'm a senator or anything like that. You know?
Oh, okay. Well, I thought it was like, maybe you're like, okay, every day I'm going to go on the bus and then I'm going to find one interesting person. I don't know if it was like
that would
specific.
That would be
Okay.
awesome, but I'm already getting exhausted just thinking about that.
Yeah.
But,
Awesome. Yeah, I think I remember seeing that. Like you yourself took portraits of yourself dressed up as each different person?
yeah.
Okay.
And it wasn't about me. It was, the way how I describe it is I was like the blank canvas, and all the makeup and costumes and wigs on top of that was the paint, and then I'm painting a picture of a different person. So it's kind of funny, and it was kind of a weird exhibit where people were like, oh, is this a narcissistic project? And I'm like, no, these people look nothing like me.
Yeah.
I'm a vessel for their story.
Yeah, that's
so.
definitely really interesting. A definite kind of alternative to just like doing a portrait of other people.
Yeah,
That's
but
pretty cool.
I think it's important to do that, kind of like get in front of the camera, because it helps you to like empathize with your subjects. And I was like, that's the only way you can shoot people better, is to kind of put yourself in their position. So.
And so outside, in addition to photography, you do some other art as well, professionally.
Yes, I do illustration and design, actually graphic design. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And did you start with those illustration, or how did like those different? I'm always super jealous of people with these like multi-talent. I'm a photographer and a drawer or an artist. It's like, that's not fair.
Well,
how did like each of those develop?
It kind of goes hand in hand. Like, I've always wanted to be like a Disney animator ever since I was a little kid. And photography just kind of like branched off of that. And even with my photography, because it's so hard to describe my ideas sometimes to people, I make storyboards, I make sketches. So I sketch out what I want them to wear, I sketch out where I position them to be, and like, you know, what the poses are. And it helps them to kind of like get into my mindset, because my ideas are pretty wacky sometimes. So I'm all like, no, this is what I mean. And, you know, people understand it better when there's like an actual visual representation there.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, so even in my photography work, I still use my sketches and reference it and things like that. And maybe that's like my film background, things like that. But it all works together.
Great. Yeah, I'm just so fascinated with that kind of background of that.
It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. So back to, it seems like people is kind of would you say people is like your main subject of most of your art?
All of my art. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so much fascinating things about humans and human nature, and not just that, but how they interact with each other. And, you know, yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I could talk about it for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
Observing people.
Yeah, and I like what you kind of said a little bit ago of like, you know, each person, whether they know it or not, is like really fascinating.
Yeah.
And has a great background and story, and that's what I really appreciate about TED Talks as well, and TEDx, this idea, you know, locally, I think we have so many interesting and intelligent and bright people, and like, God, let's just get all those people on the stage and to do talks. So one thing I've been asking our guests is, let's say you could curate a small TEDx topic. What kind of topic would you maybe choose? And if you know, like someone you can think of you'd want to put up there.
I would like to, in keeping with like the nostalgia thing, I would like people to, one of those, talk to your, if you could talk to your 7-year-old self, what would you say? And what would you do differently, kind of thing. I would like to see everybody's different approaches to that. Like if someone would be more remorseful about something, or if someone would just be kind of like unabashedly like, you know, no, I'm happy that I, you know, injured my leg here. And, you know,
it's definitely, it's definitely great when people kind of reflect and look back, and I guess that could have a pretty varied response of regrets or being stoked about like your journey.
I think it's a very powerful thing, you know. I don't have regrets about stuff. You know, it's all learning experiences, but that's just me. You know?
That's definitely a unique perspective. You know, I think I'm kind of the same way of just like appreciating the journey and everything, and I think that's a really good, healthy way to kind of like reflect, but that is unique. Yeah,
and that's what I loved about like TEDx was, you know, you can sit on a bus and talk to somebody for, you know, a couple minutes, things like that, but at TEDx, you got to like sit down and listen to people talk uninterrupted, and you can be focused on them and really soak in the message. And the best part was, afterwards, you can go and talk to them and be like, hey, that was really interesting.
Yeah, did you get to do a lot of interacting the day of? Was your talk in the beginning or towards the end?
Mine was towards the end. So I think it was after lunch, and so everyone was kind of like struggling really hard to stay awake.
It's a long day. And you know, you're watching it and you're excited.
And you got to give it to the people that stayed through the whole day, you know. But it was like, it was hard to keep my eyelids open. I was like, where is the coffee cart?
We had coffee.
But I was like, but unfortunately, I didn't get to really talk to people afterwards. But, you know, from what I overheard, it was a very interesting talk. I think people were just so overwhelmed by that point, so much information, which is great, but it was kind of like, people were like, which talk did you do again? Like, they were like, so much overload, so.
So how did you feel? Have you done other presentations? You mentioned like you've been on the news and that kind of setting. Have you done other public speaking? Like, I'm kind of interested in maybe how doing a TED Talk presentation is different from other presentations you're used to, or was this like a completely new thing for you?
No, I mean, it was, well, TED Talk was different. TEDx was different in the sense that it was kind of like delivering a monologue on stage. It actually was delivering a monologue.
Actually, that's exactly what it was.
That's exactly what it was. Whereas, you know, like being on the news or being on any other show, you get to interact. Like here, we get to interact and talk to each other and play off each other and things like that. But on TEDx, oh man, thank goodness for the editors, because if I forgot something, you know, I would like kind of like stare off until I remembered what my next word was.
When you did your actual talk?
When I did my actual talk, yeah. So I had I think I had one hiccup where I just kind of filled it with like staring off in the distance and going like, that was great.
That goes with nostalgia.
Yeah, if you excuse me, I'm remembering my past now.
Yeah. How did it feel? Okay, then since you've been like a performer in theater, then you're kind of used to the whole like rehearsal process and like leading up to being selected. And one of the things some of the other speakers really appreciated was that training. But you're kind of used to that.
I am, yeah. But it was still really great to get feedback, because otherwise, like I said, it's a monologue, and I'm just in my living room or in my studio, just kind of like talking to myself or talking to the mirror. And, you know, you don't get that feedback. You don't get that constructive feedback. So that's why it was great to work with Joe and things like that. So, yeah.
Great. And then how did you feel about sharing the stage with people of so many different topics?
It was great. It was an honor to like talk with them or speak with them. But at some points I was all like, oh man, I have to follow that. It's like, that's hard.
Yeah.
Like, but it was really great to, it's kind of like being in a play where there's some plays I'm in and I'm like, this show is amazing. I kind of wish I wasn't even in the show so I could watch it. And it was kind of like that, where I was like, oh man, all these talks are awesome. Like, I really hope I get to, like, I know I was speaking with Gabe too, Gabe Yanagihara, and I was like, oh man, I really want to watch your talk, but I'm in the green room now, so I can only kind of hear the echoes from his talk. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll just watch it when it's online.
Yeah. But then did you guys get to do a lot of training together?
No, it was kind of one-on-one. The only time where we were supposed to be all in the same room at the same time, I actually caught the flu.
Oh, no.
And Genesis was all like, oh, you could just be like, you can just Skype in. And I was like, I kind of don't want to be seen. When
we had a couple meetings of like volunteer meetings, and someone Skyped in and they didn't know it was like video, and they're like asleep in bed because they're really sick.
Awkward. But yeah, so I missed that one chance to get to be in the same room. So my first time meeting all the other speakers was actually on the day of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, oh, you're Cheyne. And I was like, oh, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Let's go. It was like an awkward family reunion.
Yeah, because then you'd like heard of each other.
Yeah, yeah. So it was great though.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I think we are going to go to a break.
Nice. And
we will come back in a minute and get talk a little more.
Awesome.
All right.
Yay.
Thanks.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, Keith.
My name's Keith Bettinger.
I knew that.
And I'm the host of ThinkTech Asia.
I knew that too.
Here on ThinkTech.
Fabulous. You got a great show going, Keith.
Thank you very much. And for our viewers out there that are interested in ThinkTech Asia, it airs every Tuesday from 4 to 4:45, and it can be accessed online at thinktech.com.
Yeah, so what kind of guests you like?
Well, we have a number of guests from academia, from practitioners of international affairs. Sometimes we have military officials. Sometimes we have public officials on the show. And our goal, we try to talk about current issues in South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, and Central Asia, all throughout the Asian realm, in more depth than you would find in traditional mainstream
That's
media.
the difference, isn't it?
Exactly.
That you're reaching out beyond what ordinary news media would do.
Right.
That's why we like you so much.
We're trying to provide a thinking person's perspective, an intelligent perspective on what's going on, and we're both sides of the story, or even when there's more than two sides, we try to cover every angle. And I think that's one of the big benefits that we provide here at ThinkTech. Is it's a really innovative source of educational programming for the people of Hawaii.
You're great, Keith. You are a great host. You got a great show going on. I watch it every week.
Thanks very much.
Why don't you guys watch it every week too, okay?
4:45 to 4 to 4:45 every Tuesday.
Aloha, my name is Miley Scarpino, and I'm the host of the Empower Hour. If you're interested in health, nutrition, fitness, here on the island of Oahu, want to learn more about places to train at or different trainers available, then watch my show on Fridays at 3. We have a great time, and I hope that you'll come join us. Much aloha. Now go get swole.
Aloha, my name is PJ, and I'm the host of Hawaii Sports Update. I am very interested in local sports, and that's why I host the Hawaii Sports Update show. I bring in guests from Hawaii, I bring in guests from UH, I bring in guests from the community, I bring in big names, I bring in small names, I bring in all names that are community related and doing positive things, sports related in the community. Come join me every Tuesday at 1 p.m. here on Hawaii Sports Update. You can also join me on my golf tournament, the first annual PJ Sports Radio Show golf tournament. It's going to be held at Coral Creek. For any information, go to ThinkTech Hawaii, INC, and friend us. The PayPal and a summary of the event will be right there available for you. And don't forget to tweet us.
Aloha, my name is Josh Green. I'm a senator from the Big Island and ER physician. Every other Tuesday, I get to host a show here on the ThinkTech program about healthcare. We call it Healthcare in Hawaii. It's really enjoyable for me to bring other healthcare leaders from around the state to talk about our pressing issues. Hawaii has long been the health state, but we need to keep up the momentum, the inertia, and with your help and with your participation, we can come and share all of the big issues that are pressing day to day. Thanks for joining us every Tuesday, alternating weeks from 2 to 2:45.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm here with Cheyne Gallarde. We're doing TEDx Honolulu. We're talking about the power of nostalgia, you know, and I think about nostalgia a lot. So, but you wanted to talk about nostalgia.
Yeah.
Why? What is it about nostalgia that attracts you?
Well, it's a very fascinating thing. It's kind of like talking about dreams. You know, it can mean one thing to one person and then something totally different to the next. Like some people could be like, no, dreams are boring, or dreams are scary. And the next person would be like, no, dreams are awesome. That's where you can escape, you know? So that's kind of like nostalgia.
Make the connection for me. Why is, let me put it this way, why is nostalgia important to you?
Well, okay, nostalgia is important to me because it helps to remind me of why I'm doing the things that I do, why I'm an artist, you know? Why do I like the 50s? Why do I like Hawaii so much? Nostalgia, it gives me that warm, fuzzy feeling inside.
Why? What is it about nostalgia?
It's not that I want to go back there, you know, because I'm happy in my life now. I'm happy in the present.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are certain feelings that you can't really
It's emotional.
recapture.
Is it emotional,
yeah,
or is
totally.
it intellectual?
It's emotional. It's a very subjective thing, you know. Like,
So when I think of, you know, childhood scenes when I was a kid, or when, you know, things happened a long time ago, whether I was involved or not, I like that, and I like it. I think if you let me spend a minute thinking about this, I'll tell you why. It's because life was simpler then. There was a sweetness, that maybe a certainty about remembering things way back when, in nostalgia. It's something you do have a handle on. You do know the four corners of it. So you can explore it in a sort of static form. It's not going to run away from you. It's not going to get more complex. The only thing that gets more complex is your appreciation of it.
yeah, yeah. And I think some people feel guilty about going back there because they're like, oh, what's wrong with me? Like, you know, does it mean that I hate my life, or, you know, that I want to be a kid again? And it's like, no, it helps to reassure you of things, because when you think about the past, and even if you kind of like messed up in the past, then you reflect on, it's like, well, you're standing now, you're breathing, you've got like a job or whatever. It's all like, so you know what happened next, and you know, so that way you don't be so afraid of the future, because you're going to be looking back. It's like,
So it's a continuum.
yeah,
that you like.
yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah, do you remember Marcel Proust? I need to tell you about Marcel Proust. He's a French author in the 1880s. He wrote novels, and the word for novels in French is roman, R-O-M-A-N, novels. And he wrote this book called Remembrance of Things Past. This is right on your point.
Yeah.
Or in French, recherche, I'm terrible pronunciation, recherche de temps perdu, the recovering the times lost. And the story, to summarize 800 pages of French, is that he would have a petit croissant, a breakfast roll. I think it was a petit croissant. Petit madeleine, which was a kind of breakfast roll. And the taste of the breakfast roll brought him back to the way he was when he was a kid. And he could remember the house he grew up in, and it was so sweet for him. And as he explored in his mind the memory of the breakfast and his parents and his brothers and sisters, whatever it was in the house, he was able to expand his consciousness into other things. He could see, first it was like a keyhole, and then it opened up for him, and he could see all these other things that he could only remember once he remembered the core point of it. And maybe, you have to tell me now, because you're the artist. Maybe that's involved here. that you have a little bit of nostalgia, a photograph, some work that you do, and that's the keyhole. But when you get in there, it opens up a whole new world, or an old world, as the case may be, of things that you want to remember, that you enjoy remembering, the sweetness of things past, recherche de temps perdu.
Yeah.
You find yourself in finding this sweetness. Is there anything familiar here for you?
Oh yeah, no, I love that whole, you know, the rose-tinted world kind of thing, you know. I'm very much an old soul, and, you know, I didn't live in Hawaii back in the 50s or even prior to that, but I love the feeling of it. I love the romanticism of the boat days. You know, you look at the Matson paintings and you just remember how remote Hawaii was.
You're not saying this just because Hawaii in many ways has lost ground. and that Hawaii doesn't have a lot of those romantic things anymore. They're gone.
Yeah, yeah. I think Hawaii is kind of losing its romanticism. Because, yeah, people just kind of take it for granted. It's just really another destination now. Whereas back then, you really had to try to get to Hawaii. It was so expensive to get here, and when you got here, it was wonderful. And, yeah, that's what I loved about it back then, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You think people will find out, let me, Webley Edwards was the guy who did Hawaii Calls in the Banyan Court of the Moana Hotel for decades. And he played that old Hapahaole music, and everybody loved it. It was the integration of Waikiki. What I mean is, Waikiki was not fully discovered until it integrated with local stuff. You know, for a time, I think it was not like that. But then in the 30s and the 40s, it all sort of came together. And he was the symbol of this. And it sold Hawaii around the world. It was, people by the millions came on the strength of what Webley Edwards was selling. It was a national radio hookup. That was really high tech in the 30s, big deal. Okay, so the question is, if that's not the case today, if we have lost the romance that it's only retrospective, how many years will it take for the world to find out?
That's a good question. Well, you know, what's interesting is that what's old is new again, you know? And that's why I think it's great that there are some places in Hawaii that are holding on to. Oh, yeah, there's some of my pictures.
This is art, or, I mean, did you paint this? Or
nope, this is a photo that I shot for a magazine. This is for like a clothing boutique.
Oh, they're awesome. You know what I mean? They're full of love. They're like, may I say, Rockwell.
Yes, exactly. That's
Yeah.
He's one of my biggest inspirations.
You saw we have a Rockwell painting.
Yes,
I
saw that out there. I was going to walk away with it. No, I'm kidding.
It's only a print.
But yeah, he is one of my biggest influences in my work. You know, that he has nostalgia at its core, and it's one of those very simple storytelling devices that he uses, and it's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
But you know, one thing, and you're the perfect guy to ask this question, is, you know, it's illustration. He was an illustrator. Now, I mean, I see him as an artist because he conveyed those messages. Those messages touch me as they touch you, I'm sure. But he was an illustrator. You don't find him, except in, what do you call it, in New England, in his hometown, which I can't remember right now. Stockbridge. Stockbridge is his hometown.
Yeah.
Where there's a museum about him. You don't find him hanging in museums so much because he's treated as like a commercial illustrator.
Yeah.
That was his first, ability.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm not saying I agree with this, but there are people out there, Cheyne, who say illustrator, it's not an artist, it's an illustrator, different.
It's different mediums, but I think in all, illustrator, photographer, dancer, they're storytellers. They're all storytellers, they're all telling a story. They say, there's of course differences, you know, they say that a painter starts with the blank canvas, but the photographer starts with the finished picture.
How interesting.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I approach my photos. I'm like, I know what I see, and I just gotta get it in the camera.
How'd you get into this?
By accident.
Okay.
I have a theater background, and I just bought like a DSLR just to shoot my friends backstage and things like that. And then they were like, "Oh, can you shoot my headshots?" And I was like, "Sure." We go by like the red brick wall and shoot some headshots. And I was like, "This is kind of fun." I was like, "What if I put people into costumes?" And so.
There you go. Okay, now this one.
This one's
okay,
a Bonnie and Clyde.
I want to stop on this. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No worries.
Okay, you're obviously sending a message.
Mm-hmm.
And let's hold on this so we can explore that message.
Mm-hmm.
So she's obviously a special type. She's a hard-to-get broad.
Mm-hmm.
He is trying to deal with her. He's not sure he can get what she's offering.
Mm-hmm.
It's his car. She's not entirely satisfied with it. She's a mall, and he's pretending that he can have her, but we're not sure. That's what I get. What did you intend to message with?
Yeah, no, it's that. It's one of those. It's like she's the type of gal where to shut her up, he has to like grab her and kiss her, that kind of thing, and then she melts into his kiss. And this one was inspired by Bonnie and Clyde. And this one was actually shot in L.A. And that car I got from a car club. I hunted around, and what's funny is I went to L.A. to shoot a car. That car is actually from a Maui plantation. So it says like Lahaina on the side.
Oh,
and I was like, this is so funny. I'm in L.A. shooting this. And my work is so specific that I bring all the wardrobe with me. So everything that...
You know exactly what you want.
You
brought that wardrobe
I brought all
with
that
you.
wardrobe with me.
You knew what she was supposed to look like.
Yes.
How about the hairdo? Did you know that too?
No, that I worked out on the spot. And the model, he's more of an athletic guy. And so the shoes he was wearing was like kind of like soccer shoes. Yeah. And I was all like, that's not going to fly. I gave him my shoes for the shot.
Oh, no. We're the same size.
Yeah, luckily we were the same size. So you're not seeing it, but I'm wearing his like bright orange soccer shoes.
Now, we take photographs here at ThinkTech. We do a lot of photographs.
Yeah.
To get a photograph, can we see it back again? To get a photograph like that would be very hard. And I'm thinking, you really had to work, or at least have great skill to put that together. And beyond the framing, which is wonderful, and beyond the objects in the photograph, also wonderful, and the background and all that. How did you get the light to look like that? The word Photoshop is ringing in my mind.
As many people, or they see something like this, they're like, Instagram, a filter. But, it all starts with the planning. I know what I wanted, and I was traveling, so I couldn't bring my entire light kit. So I just brought 2 tiny lights, and,
Oh, that's great.
I just had my 2 assistants stand at specific spots to light up his face, and then the other one was to light up the car. And then I just kind of relied on, it was actually a kind of gloomy day that day, so we just kind of...
Doesn't look gloomy at all.
Yeah.
Those clouds are fabulous.
I waited.
Did you have to light up the clouds too? I'm only kidding.
No, I wish I had that kind of power. It's like, they say that, 90% of photography is moving furniture. Well, for me, 90% of my photography is just waiting. Waiting for the right moment,
Yeah.
And that's one of those things. You can't rush it. You can plan all you want, but sometimes the weather isn't on your side, and you just got to roll with it. So.
Well, why do you use Instagram? I mean, what is that? Is that part of your shtick? That's an LA word.
Shtick, yeah. No, I love Instagram because it's instant storytelling. It's like, you take the time to compose a shot just like you would with a regular big camera, What I don't like about it is that people think that filters can fix anything and everything.
Yeah.
But it's not true. I mean, what is going to make your croissant look nice and warm is going to make your plant look dead with the same filter.
Wait a minute. I've been operating on the basis that the filters will do anything at all for me. You're breaking all my icons.
I know.
Today.
I'm just blowing your mind.
I'm in a state of trauma.
Well, yeah, I think that's what people think, that they can just like throw some filters on something and it'll like make anything look great.
But you know, one day soon, somebody's going to come up with a filter where you can't say that. I mean, you can say that this filter knows what I want.
Yeah.
This filter will give me everything I ever hoped for. It's a matter of technology.
You know, I would love to see that. And you know what I would say to that? That will make the hand-adjusted, hand-created things all the more valuable.
Touche.
Yeah.
Okay, remember that. There's a lot here. You know, the thing about an artist that makes it work is the artist, aside from giving you the pleasure of his art, the joy of finding the common message, of hearing it from him, of reading it from him, of experiencing what aside from that, he has to be able to explain it to you. He has to be able to engage with you. And Cheyne Gallarde can do that. So thank you, Cheyne.
Oh, thanks.
It's great to have you on the show.
Yeah.
I wish I was here the whole time. This is the TEDx Honolulu. We're talking about the power of nostalgia. And like it or not, it's very important to our mental health
Oh, yeah.
to have connection with all the parts of our lives.
Yeah. Go back to that warm place.
Yeah. Thank you, Cheyne.
Yeah, thank you, Jay.